Hello and welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle on Jump To It. I'm joined as usual by Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now we're going to look back at all the things that happened last week, and quite a few happened. And that's the bottom line. Besides our Derby weekend, which we'll also go through some of the main talking points from that, we had a big issue earlier in the week with a Public Accounts Committee hearing where the IHRB were up in front of them and dropped a bombshell. Basically, the original hearing was into 2021 accounts, where there was a bit of a discrepancy in the accounts in the sense that the former CEO of the IHRB, Dennis Egan, had taken a retirement package, and it turned out he got 142 grand more in his retirement payoff than he was supposed to get under the terms of the scheme. And that 142 grand, it turns out, was paid to him not by his employer, but by his previous employer, the Turf Club, who he hadn't worked for 5 years. So that was the main gist of it, why they were in there. But when they were in there, Darragh O'Loughlin, the new CEO of the IHRB, said that something had cropped up the day before of grave concern to him, a matter he found in the 2022 financial accounts for the IHRB. And as yet, we don't know what exactly happened, but we know it's a bombshell and we know it's causing havoc within the industry. And there's going to be an external independent inquiry into exactly what went on there. And we will know more about that probably in about 6 to 8 weeks is what we're told at this stage. Emma, Johnny, what do you make of this? Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I read through the accounts, and some of the, I think kind of the main issues that the auditors found were obviously the exit package paid to Dennis Egan, but also public bodies are required kind of under the code of practice to disclose the salary information when preparing the accounts. Now, for some reason, the IHRB had actually been granted kind of an exemption to this rule by the Department of Agriculture, I think between 2016 and 2020. But I think with a change in minister, the minister voted to them in 2022 and required that they disclose the salary information. And the auditor noted in the 2021 accounts that this hadn't been complied with. And this is obviously an issue. You'd have to kind of question in the first place why they were exempt from disclosing the salary information, whereas all other public bodies are kind of required to disclose it. I mean, they're a public body, and they're
not officially now. That's the one thing here. They're not officially a public body. They're supposed to be a private body that is paid public funds. It's a funny situation. They're not in the same category as Horse Racing Ireland, which is a fully semi-state organisation, and there's freedom of information and all that type of thing around that. And there's a disclosure of the CEO's salary and salary bands for different categories within it. But as far as I know, the IHRB would not necessarily have fallen into that.
Yeah, but I think obviously the minister has requested them to disclose this information, kind of from, maybe that's why they were exempt in the first place. So it's kind of a tricky one. But they haven't disclosed the information, obviously. And like you mentioned, the exit package paid to Dennis Egan, I think it was 58% higher than what was advertised in their early retirement package. That was offered to employees. So it's a real messy situation. I suppose we're kind of waiting for more details to come out, and when they'll come out is kind of anyone's question. But it's not a great look for the IHRB. There's definitely kind of a cloud hanging over them at the moment.
Yeah, what do you make of it, Johnny?
Yeah, it was bizarre. This has been somebody said RTE produced the best drama it's ever produced in the past week, even though I don't think it actually intended to. And then this was added in at the end, and I couldn't believe it. To be honest, I didn't even know. These things I kind of sometimes they pass me by a bit. I didn't know this IHRB thing was happening, and then the intervention that took place so early on, and of Mr. O'Loughlin, obviously, who had seen this grave matter of grave concern, and then you're told as Mazars is going to carry out a look into it, and the whole Dennis Egan thing obviously comes to light, and I suppose that was a bit controversial at the time. Dennis was actually racing yesterday. I've seen him racing a bit lately. I've spoken to him a couple of times at Kilbeggan. I wasn't talking to him lately, but I just kind of nodded at him from a distance. I saw him racing, so he was obviously happy to go racing. I'm sure people were sort of talking to him about this because he was mentioned in all the reports. I suppose why was Why was he given that 58% more? I have no idea. There are a lot of rumours going out. The strange thing is, like, I've kind of been trying to report on it, but it's just such a grey area, and I really don't exactly know what's going on, and I don't know what this matter of such grave concern is that I'm almost wary of doing anything on it. But I don't think it's going to be a good look for racing one way or the other, Vinny, and particularly not, the timing couldn't be much worse.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. It's a mess. Like, the only thing I think coming out of it is the fact that Darragh O'Loughlin looks like he's dealing with a straight bat here. He's just seeing what he sees, and he's saying it as he sees it, and he's dealing with it, which I'm not always sure we get that within racing, because there's so many conflicted interests. Everyone has a finger in a pie somewhere, or is involved somewhere, and everything else in the industry, whereas he's come in clean slate, starts off, and all of a sudden he's finding all sorts of things when he comes in and does that. So I think he's good for the sport. I think we need to clean these things up, whatever they are. Obviously we have no idea what the new grave concern is, but if it's a grave concern to him, I think it's a grave concern to the rest of us too. It has to be, doesn't it? There has to be something very significant here. It's very hard to work out from the tiny bit of wording we're getting on it what exactly went on or what he saw. In the sense that we're told there's no sign at this stage that there was any misappropriation of funds, and he also says that no one made a personal gain, which seems astonishing to me in the simple sense that we're told it's about financial transactions. So if there's a financial transaction that took place in 2022 within the IHRB and it's not kosher, according to him, it causes grave concern. Somebody somewhere had to make some money out of that. Whatever, even if it was 50p was transferred from person A to person B is 50 cent better off. So there has to be a personal gain. I can't understand how there is no personal gain if there was a financial transaction that is causing grave concern. So that for me is the odd part with it. The other bit here, just it's hard to know where we sit with this, but going back, the industry was originally, it was all Turf Club. It was run by the Turf Club. The Turf Club ran horse racing in Ireland for hundreds of years and everything else. Then going back 20-something years ago, there was a revolt within the industry where the Irish Horse Racing Authority was set up as a separate body to run the sport as such. And the Turf Club still kept the regulatory functions. So that was the first split. The IHA then was turned into Horse Racing Ireland at a later stage to carry on doing the same thing under government legislation and everything else. And then in 2018, the Turf Club took a further backseat from all of this by setting up a new body, the IHRB, which was to run the regulatory wing of it. So the Turf Club went back into being just a private club, not necessarily involved in the industry. But obviously it's still very much involved here, isn't it? Not only has it been appointing the board to the IHRB, or partly doing that with its other sister affiliation, the Irish National Steeplechase Committee or whatever, right? But they also have people on the board of Horse Racing Ireland as well that are appointed by the Turf Club too. So then you come along that this private club is still involved. It has tentacles all the way through the industry. And then it comes along with Dennis Egan when he goes to take his early retirement. They come and pay 142 grand. That's an astonishing amount of money, isn't it? Like, it's, as I said in a blog this week, I could understand his former colleagues in the Turf Club saying, poor old Dennis is heading off to pasture. We'll do a whip around and we'll buy him a TV, or we'll get him a set of golf clubs or something for his retirement. But how do you come up with 142 grand? And it turns out that when you look at what the 142 grand is, it appears to be the equivalent of a year's salary plus the employer's contribution for PRSI as well. So like, they knew exactly what they were dealing with here, and they paid that amount. And I'd love to know why they did it, and if they could come out now and tell us. That clears the air in a huge amount around this if we can find out exactly what went on there. But there's no chance, is there? I don't think they're going to tell us anything. What do you think, Johnny?
Well, no, because, I mean, can there be a good explanation for that? I mean, Dennis was asked at the he was asked in the Oireachtas hearings previously, to reveal his salary, and he wasn't entitled to reveal his salary. And in fairness, he didn't reveal his salary. I can't remember who the question was, but who asked the question. But this just seems very strange. Dennis seemingly, voluntarily left the organisation. So why was this, as you say, this staggering amount of money when, I think there's a lot of disquiet around the money that's in racing, full stop. And why was this money necessary? sorry for his package. I'm baffled by it, Vinny. I really am.
Yeah. The other thing for me, Emma, you're an accountant. You can tell me this because this seems bizarre to me. Let's take it. There's a legitimate explanation for why the Turf Club decided to give him 142 grand, right? That maybe it was a whip around between all their members and they all said, go on, we'll stick a few quid in for Dennis. He's on his way off, right? If you were doing that, or if I was going to do that, or the three of us were going to do it for someone else, wouldn't you think we'd give it to the person? But they didn't give it to Dennis. They gave it to the IHRB. And then it was included in his package in the IHRB. Why wouldn't you just give it to Dennis? That's what I don't understand as well. And then when it went into the IHRB accounts in their 2021 returns, they put it down as other income, which is surely is there to disguise what that money was. Like surely you'd put it down as 142 grand given to the Turf Club towards Dennis's exit package, but that's not what it was put down as, just other income. This would be quite unusual, Emma, would it?
Yeah, it would be extremely unusual, I'd imagine. You just have to question where the money came from in the first place. Like you were saying, the Jockey Club paid to the IHRB. Yeah, look, I'd imagine it's a really messy, tricky situation, and it just kind of casts, like I said, a dark cloud over the IHRB because it just doesn't seem very transparent, I suppose. They haven't come out and kind of cleared the air, I suppose, is kind of what everyone's waiting for, just to kind of get the explanation for the whole thing. And whether we're going to get kind of the full story or not is kind of anyone's guess. But yeah, it's like you were mentioning, it's not a public body, but at the same time, the horse racing in Ireland is semi-funded by the state, I suppose. So like when you hear the headlines of these kind of financial mishaps in an organisation like the IHRB, like Johnny mentioned, like it does kind of cast a doubt over racing. And like hopefully it's not going to have a negative effect on the public's perception about how racing handles its funds as well, because without the funding they receive from the government and this and that, like racing might struggle a bit, and which something like this isn't going to help. When they're coming up in the Oireachtas, explaining their accounts and all of that. For funding going forward, will they be questioning their practices? Are the funds being used properly? When this kind of grave financial matters, as Darragh O'Loughlin said, it's a bit of a worry going forward, I'd say.
Also, like whoever gave the money, is this a conflict of interest? Like, so if somebody gives money to the Turf Club, is he or she involved in racing? Like, who is it, and why is this money being given to the IHRB to give to Dennis, and what does that entail going forward? So I don't know the answer to any of these questions.
No, same. And then the other one is the bigger issue, I suppose, is this matter of grave concern, is we know nothing about it realistically. So we're going to now spend the next 6 to 8 weeks, if not longer. These things can draw out forever, as we know with previous incidents. But we're stuck in a vacuum now where we know no information. So what happens in a vacuum is people start making up their own versions of what's going on. I've already had 2 people on to me in the last few days giving me explanations as to what this is. And they're completely different. And I'd say neither of them are true, but they're only the 2 I've heard. I'm sure if you stay long enough around racing people, you'll get 50, 60 different versions of what actually happened here and people catastrophizing it and everything else. The sooner this comes out and we get a clear understanding of what happened, the better it is for everyone. And the same way I would have thought with the Dennis Egan situation, that needs to be clarified. It wasn't clarified to my level of what I was looking for anyway at the Public Accounts Committee hearing the other day. So that needs to be revisited. We need to really understand what the hell really went on here, and we're not getting there is the bottom line. Anyway, look, we're not going to sort it now either. So we shall move on to the Curragh. 3 days at the Curragh, Irish Derby, one of the biggest weekends of the year around my local area, and they got a good turnout overall. The crowd was up 4,500 over the 3 days. A total of 23,500 attended the 3 days racing compared to 19,000 last year. Johnny, Emma, you were both there. What did you make of the crowd? Did you feel there was a good atmosphere, Emma?
Yeah, I was there yesterday on the Sunday. I think there was just under 11,000 there. I think is that slightly down on 2022 by official figures. Not much in it. Look, I thought kind of went in the gate kind of just before the first race, and I thought there was a good enough atmosphere around the parade ring and good enough buzz around the place without being too packed. But after the Derby, the place just seemed to empty completely. The atmosphere died very, very fast. Look, the weather didn't help, obviously. It was a really, really windy day, and it was actually my first time in the new stand in the Curragh. and like you couldn't stay in there for too long because you get absolutely blown away. So maybe that affected the atmosphere a small bit as the day went on, but like it was a good day's racing. I thought the Derby was a bit deflating, obviously with the injury to poor San Antonio. Kind of took a bit away from it for me, and the finish kind of left a few questions for a few people as well, I suppose. But a decent day overall. But like you'd probably expect more from racing. It's kind of one of the biggest flat racing days in the country. You probably expect a bit more, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose a very short price favourite doesn't help. The same stable having the first four home doesn't necessarily help either. What did you make of it, Johnny? Were you there just Sunday, or were you there any of the other days?
Yeah, I was just there Sunday actually. Yeah. So I couldn't testify to the other days. Like I would prefer a Saturday derby, to be honest. I think it just fits in better in terms of the weekend. Sunday, obviously, people are thinking I have to go back to work tomorrow, so maybe half their mind is on that. As Emma says, the atmosphere I thought it was very, very flat. I mean, you've races now, and like this isn't necessarily the Curragh's fault, but you've races where the crowd just isn't really getting involved at all. And then I'm kind of like, well, what's the point going racing if there's no atmosphere? And like the wind was bad; it was a very windy day, and in the stand, as Emma says, it was very notable, and that's just an issue with the Curragh. It's very wide open. In terms of we left before the last, and it was very, very straightforward getting out. I thought the queues weren't too bad, really. It seemed to work quite well. There were plenty of staff on site. Aidan having the first four in the derby, that's definitely no help. And I just felt that, I don't know what the Curragh can do about this, but obviously the crowd being down on last year was not good. But in terms of the atmosphere, I didn't feel, if you brought somebody racing, I don't think he or she'd be crying out to go back based on the buzz that was at the Curragh. And it's something that still has to work on, obviously.
Yeah, one little bugbear for me with the Curragh when they redeveloped it was the betting ring where they put it. I've always felt it should be in front of the stand where it originally was. Would that have made any difference, Johnny, do you think? Yeah, I know. Like, I was never mad on that because I thought it really impinged on the view from the stand. You had to go way up to see over the umbrellas, or certainly that. And I know the bookmakers say that. I spoke to a couple of bookmakers yesterday and said business wasn't great. Maybe it does, but like I was looking around the infield, like surely we can get picnics in the infield and get like a tent or something there, get like the old days back, get it to become like a real festival vibe, because it didn't feel like that. It just felt quite sterile. And I know the Curragh has a reputation for the flat people and all that, but like surely it can't have gone to the stage where it was this big day when Budweiser sponsored it, this massive kind of party. But now, like, it didn't feel like a party at all to me. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, let's look at some of the other races besides the Derby itself. The Pretty Polly Stakes, that was one that caused a bit of controversy, I suppose. It was a very nasty incident there with Ross Carberry and Billy Lee almost brought down. What did you make of that, Emma? Jamie Spencer rides the winner via Sistina and gets 6 days for careless riding. Could he have done much about it, do you think?
Yeah, look, it was a really tricky one, I suppose. Like you couldn't, I don't think they ever even considered doing anything about the result because, the filly was obviously miles best in the race. And Jamie Spencer, I suppose, like she was going right. He had his stick in the right hand, I think, and he was trying to pull her off. What he could have done more, it's very hard to say unless he was maybe just a bit stronger physically, but look, I suppose they had to do something about it. Like there was fierce interference. I think Ross Carberry was very, very lucky to even stay on her feet. You have to feel so sorry for her. Like she was obviously disqualified in the race last year after finishing third out of through no fault of her own, and now she kind of her chance of doing anything in the race was really curtailed after being crossed over by Via Sistina. Look, I don't think she would have won or anything like that, but I'd say she could have been in the first three. She was kind of starting to get going with a bit of a run, but Paddy Toomey and Billy Lee will probably be fairly disappointed with that. But look, you can't say much about the result, I suppose, rather than maybe if you backed Ross Carberry to place. But yeah, Jamie Spencer, I can't really say he's hard done by, I suppose. Like there was a lot of interference there, but he didn't. I think 6 days is probably fair, I think, in my opinion, because there was a fair bit of interference. Yeah, what did you think, Johnny?
I'd be more inclined to throw the horse out than ban Jamie Spencer, to be honest, because I'm no jockey, but I thought he was taking corrective measures, never had his whip in his left hand, was trying to kind of edge her out to the left when she hung right for some reason. And this is just, purely down to the horse, not down to Jamie Spencer. The horse is veering totally off a straight line into other rivals, and it's clear that this is not Jamie Spencer's doing. In other jurisdictions, the winner just gets thrown out, and as much as she's clearly the best horse in the day, I think that would have been more equitable than giving Jamie Spencer a 6-day ban, in my view.
And also in that incident, what caught my eye was the fact that Ryan Moore was on the rail, and he had his whip in his right hand, and his horse was drifting somewhat left, not to the extent that Jamie Spencer's was drifting right, but at the same time it moved off a straight line. That caused the sandwiching effect on Ross Carby and the other horse in it as well. So I was surprised that Ryan Moore had made no attempt to keep his horse straight. He was using the whip in the right hand, the horse was drifting left, and that certainly had some part to play in the whole incident, and yet he didn't even get cautioned over what he did, never mind anything else. So I think they just concentrated on the winner. I suppose they were looking at the fact around the stewards' inquiry, what do we do here, because there was a couple of 2.5 lengths or something in it. So I presume they were saying to themselves, we can't throw out the winner, which is what you were suggesting, Johnny. I don't think that would have been fair myself, because I thought the winner was far and away the best filly in the race, but at the same time, you feel they had to do something, so they did it to Jamie Spencer. I think it's a bit harsh myself, because I think he was making the best that he was doing the best he could to try and do the best for the horse to get her to win was the first thing. That's it. I suppose it's a primary thing when a jockey goes out in the race, they're trying to win the race. So he had to do that first off to try and win the race. But as he was doing it, I think he did his best. He knew she was hanging. He'd a hard hand on the left rein, pulling it hard. You could see her head was even tilted to the left. He was pulling the left rein so hard. He was hitting her with the whip in the right hand, which should keep her off the others, but it didn't work. But anyway, not a lot we can do about that. What about the rest of the weekend? Anything else catch your eye, Emma?
Sticking to the Saturday, I suppose, I thought Mashore for Johnny Murta and Ben Cohen, it was just probably one of the as good a ride as you'll see on the cover. He really bounced out and just kind of totally made all Elrifa like hot favourite, but Johnny's horse came out, jumped out the gates, and you have to give massive credit to Ben Cohen. It was just so confident, and when a front runner gets going like that in the car, they're very, very hard to reel back. So yeah, I think you have to praise him a lot for that ride. A young jockey, I think Johnny thinks an awful lot of him. So there's so many good riders coming through. It's just to give a mention, Shane Cross as well retired, which was, I suppose, a shock to everyone else. I think he only decided himself last week. Big shock, but he's kind of the same generation as Ben Cohen and a few others. But yeah, I thought that was kind of just a really eye-catching ride on the Saturday. Moving on to the Sunday, I suppose, I backed the first winner, Buccaneero Forte, for Adrian Murray and Amo Racing. I thought that was very, very impressive. The Coventry form getting a good boost there. Battle on strongly. I think it was probably quite a good 2-year-old race. Unquestionable was fairly fancied. Probably a bit of a surprise that Roy Moore even rode him over His Majesty, who had the experience, I suppose. But I'd say the form of that race could work out quite well. And the Derby was a bit of a disappointment for me, to be honest. I think the Spreewell and White Birch were kind of adding a bit of interest in it, I suppose, the third and fourth from Epsom coming back. I thought Spreewell would run a bigger race again, because I thought he was kind of unlucky in Epsom, but look, they didn't run much of a race, either of them. Maybe Spreewell was a bit impeded by the ill-fated O'Brien horse. It's kind of hard to, I thought that on initial viewing, it's hard to kind of make a full judgment on it, because obviously you can't see that in the replay, but it was just a bit deflating, I suppose. Coming into the Sunday, I was quite excited for the Derby. Augusta Rodin was the superstar, but I thought there was some kind of dangers to him with White Birch and Spreewell, but the way the race unfolded, it was just very messy, and seeing the bad injury as well, just kind of, yeah, it wasn't a very memorable classic, I suppose.
Yeah, just Johnny, what about that? The Shane Cross weight, his issue at a very, very young age. It's I suppose it's a sign of the times, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very tough one for him to take, and I think it will be difficulty for jockeys going forward in Europe, because of the weight issue and kids generally getting bigger. But it was definitely disappointing for Shane, and obviously he's brother Nathan. They've been very prominent riders in their short career so far, and Shane a very promising rider. So yeah, like I think Emma's on about Ben Cohen. I think Ben is outstanding. I think we've some very good young riders at the moment, and Ben, the likes of Daniel King and some others. And just from the racing itself, Vinny, it was nice on Friday to see Tony Martin, Michael Grassick, and Tom Cleary all having winners at a festival weekend. Particularly the likes of Tom Cleary wouldn't have many winners, and a horse to take out for me was probably Liang, the filly, the Frankel filly, who won the maiden before that. Aidan had some really good maiden performances over the first couple of days, so I think there was actually a lot to talk about. Friday was possibly even the highlight of the 3 days from sort of anecdotal evidence. It was nice to see some sort of smaller yards of winners as well, but I think that Frankel filly will be very promising.
Yeah, you talk about Tudor City as well. 11 years of age, winning again, twice a Galway hurdle winner. Could turn up in Galway again in a few weeks' time, I'd imagine. And then the other one, Verhoeven. Why do we keep missing this? Every 6 times it's done that in the Curragh. Just bounces out, gone, and good luck. I didn't think it had stayed at trip as the first thing. It was 7 furlongs. All its wins were kind of 5 and 6, but it looked to be going away at the last furlong. It looked like it wanted another furlong. It's amazing what that horse grows a leg every time it goes to the Curragh. It's only trained around the corner from it, I suppose. But Michael Grassick has done extremely well with that one too. Other ones, Johnny Murtagh, he had a terrific weekend, didn't he, overall? His horses were flying. I got reports last week, I was told, Johnny Murtagh's, there's ringworm. A lot of his horses have ringworm. Everyone will want ringworm if that's the case, won't they? I've never seen anything like it. Everything he ran a blinder. Got some great rides as well, I have to say, from his jockeys. I would imagine that there's an element of Johnny given the tactics beforehand. It was certainly for that Mashur. That was terrific. Knowing the other horses lacked a recent run, 2 of his main rivals and everything else, I thought it was a terrific performance, and they got nowhere near him, didn't he? Didn't see which way he went, basically. Overall, I thought it was a good weekend's racing. It kind of whets your appetite for what is coming at Galway, because some of the handicaps, we saw a lot of horses ran. Aidan McGuinness ran a load of his ones that are due to run in the likes of Galway, so they're all getting somewhat prep runs now. Not saying they weren't looking for to win the big pots at the weekend, but I think conditions mightn't necessarily have suited them on the quick ground. That was another thing as well. We had quite a few withdrawals on Sunday, Emma. Quickish ground, I presume, was the reason for the majority of them. What do you think? Was that the wind?
Yeah, it's there was a nice few withdrawals being announced kind of throughout the day, mostly due to the ground. I think I presume it was the wind just drying the ground so fast. Like there was gale force wind like nearly all through the day. So like there's not really much they could do. But I suppose just kind of the way it fell, they can't really control the weather throughout the day. But yeah, I presume that they had it kind of right in the morning, but the wind just kind of dried it all the way through the day. Yeah.
Any other observations on it, Johnny, before we leave the Curragh and its Derby weekend?
Well, I'd forgive them on the ground issue. Like, I mean, it's good to firm. It's flat racing. If you don't want to run your horse on it, and the going had changed a bit since Friday's declarations for Sunday, we'll say, if you don't want to run your horse, take him out. A lot of people did. That's life. It's very, very hard to get water and right. It could have gone the other way as well. Obviously we had a fatality on the day, so the Curragh will obviously look at that. But the vast majority of horses ran. We've had not that much rain. It's been warm, a lot of wind, and I think they could possibly look at some changes just to maybe get the Derby atmosphere going a bit more. Next year, and maybe just try to work on that crowd, because like really it should be closer to 20,000 than 10. And Brian Kavanagh very helpfully gave me 2 tickets that I had to auction off for a charity, and I hope the 2 people that got there, that won the prize, enjoyed their day. But I still think there can be improvements going forward.
And just the fact that the Derby was at 3:40. Now, I presume this was for TV purposes as much as anything else, and it was put on Sunday because of the World Pool with the Tote, which is a big earner for the Curragh. They're going to get over $500,000 in media rights for that alone, which is $500,000 sterling as far as I know. So it's a big earner for them all round. But it's on at 3:40. The last race is 6 o'clock. Like it's after the mayor's party, isn't it? Kind of thing that everyone's going home, as you say. The crowd is thinning out after each race after the Derby. Should it be put later in the card? Would that be a thing, Emma? Would you think?
Probably would have helped the crowd anyway. Like an awful lot of people seem to leave kind of nearly straight after the Derby, which kind of put a damper on the rest of the day. Really, I didn't think it was too bad in the lead up to it. It was kind of a decent crowd, comfortable. But yeah, they have to look at something, I suppose, because it doesn't have the buzz as you would get in kind of other big meetings, kind of, I suppose, more so jumps meetings like the likes of the Dublin Racing Festival. Like, I mean, it has absolutely nothing on it. It's a nice day racing, but it's not kind of, it wouldn't be kind of flagship in my calendar to go racing, I suppose.
Fair enough. All right. Have you each got a horse and meet that you can follow from the weekend? Johnny, you mentioned something already, did you?
Yeah, I suppose it's not necessarily the most original, but Liang, the Frankel filly who won the maiden on the Friday, she was obviously very well fancied, sent off 8-13. That'd be unusual enough for an Aidan O'Brien horse. Certainly Galileo being sent off 8-13 would be very unusual. But she was obviously shown plenty apparently with other colts. I thought she looked a bit green as well. I find Frankel horses, as much as he's become the big stallion, I still find a lot of them quite hot and not straightforward and not necessarily entirely reliable as well. I wouldn't have a great record backing them, but she looks like she could be a star. Very
good. Emma, what do you think?
I thought Bold Discovery was very impressive yesterday for Jessica Harrington. He beat Tarawa, who's a hot favourite for Dermot Wells. Quite a surprise result, really. But the quotes afterwards could kind of catch your eye a small bit. I think Kate said he was suffering with allergies since he was quite impressive winning back in September 2022, but been a bit disappointing since. But I thought that was a very good win yesterday. I think Tarawa was kind of deserved favourite after being fourth in the Guineas. So yeah, I'd be following him going forward. I think he could have more to come if they've kind of resolved these issues.
Yeah. You also mentioned there about Jessica Harrington winner Shane Foley back as well from injury. It was good to see him back and ride a winner too. Another one who was back from injury over the weekend was yesterday in Cartmel. Jack Kennedy hadn't ridden since January. 8th of January, I think he got a fall in Nice. Great to see him back from his broken leg. Hopefully he'll be back up and running now for the season ahead and maybe give it a shot at winning the title, because I think he deserves that after all the mishaps he's had over the last few years. Look, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll be back again next Monday with more of the same, hopefully. Maybe not as much controversy as we had with the IHRB stuff. Do it a week off at this stage. Anyway, thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you all again next week. Thanks for everything. Bye for now.